Hello, this is Britt Caswell with another example video. In this video, I'm covering example 1 from section 4-4 in the SavvasRealize Algebra 1 textbook. So in this video, we are looking at understanding an inequality in two variables. So you guys know that an inequality is some value is greater than or less than another value. It could also be equal to if it has this little bar. And you guys have seen inequalities on a number line, right? So you guys know if there's a 0 here, you can find it, right? But when we have two variables, a number line no longer suffices because the single number line only works for one variable. So when we have a second variable introduced to our inequalities, we have to put it onto a coordinate plane so that we can accommodate both of our variables. So here are the steps in order to graph to show the solutions to this, okay? The first step is to graph the line like normal. Alright, so that means that I will be using the y-intercept that it has here of -1. And then it's going to have a slope of 1, right? Because there's a 1 in front of that x. So I'd have a point here, and here, here. So I'll eventually draw a line between those points. But what I want to do is I want to describe to you how to know what kind of line to use. Alright? So if you can have an inequality that is equal, so if it has this little bar under it right here, use a solid line. If there's not an inequality symbol on there, or an equality symbol on there, so there's no little line here, use a dotted line. So in this case, because I have the equal part here, I'm going to be using a solid line to draw this. Now what that means is that the values that are on the line itself, like these individual points, these are solutions. Now if I was using a dotted line, the values on the line would not be solutions. Now our second step here is we are going to be picking a test point. I usually try to pick 0, 0. Okay? The key here is that it cannot be on the line. Alright? So I usually pick 0, 0 if possible, just to see if it works. And I'm going to see if 0, 0 satisfies the inequality. So is 0 less than or equal to 0 minus 1? Well, no, it's not. So what that means is that this side of the line is where there are no solutions. So we need to shade in the other direction. So you should get something that looks kind of like this. So if the test point works, shade towards the point. If the test point does not work, shade away from point. And there you have it. So that is how you graph an inequality. And so the solutions are any of the points that are on this shaded side of the line. And it's also any of the points that are on this line because it's a solid line. let's go ahead and try another one. So our first step, right, we're going to graph it like normal. Now notice this inequality, it has the same line on there. So I don't have to go through too much work in order to graph it because I've already graphed this line. Alright, so it has a y-intercept of -1 and a slope of +1, which makes it look kind of like this. Now because there's no equal part on this inequality, I'm going to draw my line with a dotted line. That means that points that are on that line are not a part of the solution set. And then if I pick the test point, I have 0 is greater than 0 minus 1. Then I can see that I need to shade this way towards 0, 0. Now, I want to show you a little bit of a hack here, like a life hack. If your line is written in slope-intercept form, sorry, just trying to catch up with my writing, then you can just know which way to shade based off the inequality symbol. So you won't need a test point. Right, so if you look, it says y is greater than x minus 1. So the numbers greater than this line are above it. Now that only works if it's in slope-intercept form. This does not work for any other form in the line. So what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to put a couple things on here. I'm going to show you this point, that's at 0, -1, is a solution because of solid line. But here on this graph at the bottom, the blue graph, this point, 0, -1, is not a solution because the line is dotted. So just be aware that the points on the line change whether they're part of the solution when you have a solid or a dotted line. Alright, so on this one I'm actually going to graph these so that we can describe the graph. So I should have given myself some graph paper for this video. I didn't think about that. That's alright. Graphing by hand is a good thing to practice and be used to. Alright. So here we are. So I have a y-intercept of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a slope of -3. So that means I fall by 3 and run by 1. Fall by 3, run by 1. Alright. Now this is telling me to use a dotted line. Alright, because it doesn't have an equal to portion on it. So there we go, there's our dotted line. And then in terms of shading, it says all the y values that are less than -3x. So that we're looking for the part that's below the line. Like that. So if I were describing this, I would say all points below the line y equals -3x plus 5 and not on the line itself. So that's how I would describe the graph. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's try just one last one to make sure we know how to describe it and how to graph it. Now this example, if you notice, has the same line, doesn't it? But think about the difference in how we're going to graph it. What's the difference in the equation? Well, it's that it can be equal to, right? And so when I go to actually, do the graphing portion of this, I'm going to make sure, oops, this one should be 1 over, this one should be 1 over. I'm going to make sure that I'm using a solid line instead of a dotted line. And that's because of the equal to part. So right there says to use a solid line. It's the same thing as thinking about whether you need to shade a circle or not shade a circle. Remember with your number lines? It's just the shaded circle, the filled in circle, is solid, and the hollow circle is dotted. That's all. Now in terms of shading this, it says y is greater than or equal to all this stuff. So the part that's greater than is the part that's above the line, which would be all this stuff here. Now if you're doing notes on this, it's a really good idea to have colored pencils, because like my little pen tool, it overrides colors. Whereas if you have colored pencils, you could see that it's everything. So this includes the numbers that are on the axis. I just can't really show that very good because otherwise I'll erase my axis. But yeah, so I would recommend having some colored pencils. You get some really pretty graphs out of it too. So if I'm describing this, I would say this is all points above, because it's above it now, the line y equals negative 3x plus 5, and on the line itself. So there you have it. That's an introduction to inequalities in two variables. Until next time.